In pathology, we look at biochemical transactions, especially ones that go wrong. And most of you signed a contract this morning that you didn't bother to read. What you call feeling awake is actually a form of molecular gaslighting because your brain isn't actually more energized. It just becomes deaf to its own exhaustion. You're essentially taking out a biological payday loan with a 400% interest rate. And right now, that debt is compounding in the dark for however many years you've been indulging in this relationship. For decades, we've heard biohackers call coffee a superfood. We hear about reduced risks of Alzheimer's, lower rates of type 2 diabetes, and the protective effects on the liver. And I'm here to tell you that much of that actually is grounded in peer-reviewed science. But there is a good, a bad, and a chemical ugly that the massive coffee industry is not telling you about. As a pathologist, my specialty is the study of how human hardware fails. I've spent years of my life dedicated to studying human tissues, cells, and the silent systemic signals that we ignore daily. Today, I'm making a forensic audit of your morning routine. We'll look at why your brain is waking up dirty and foggy. We look at the paint stripper chemistry used to decaffeinate your coffee beans. And most excitingly, we'll look at the genetic lottery that determines if this cup of coffee is saving your life or costing you heavily in silence. This is why some of you drink coffee in the evening and sleep just fine, but others stare at the ceiling all night long. I'm Dr. Amin Hedayat, triple board certified physician, pathologist, and assistant clinical professor. Welcome to my channel. My goal is to remove the barriers to medical science so you can finally understand your own hardware. This coffee audit is just one of the many weekly chapters. I'm currently preparing forensic deep dives into hidden costs of sugar, artificial sweeteners, the pathology of chronic stress, and a complete audit of human sleep cycle, just to name a few. If you want the biological manual for your body, please join this community so you don't miss the next video or the next protocol. Now, before we open the files on this audit, here's a quick heart-to-heart. I'm a doctor, but I'm not your personal medical doctor. The data I'm sharing is for education and empowerment. Every human body is a unique case study. So before you make major changes to your habits or starting new supplements, please consult your personal healthcare team. We're here to learn how the human system works, but your specific health journey needs a one-on-one medical professional. To understand why you feel awake after a cup of coffee, we have to respect the plant's intent. And it sure wasn't to help you finish your quarterly report or to pull an all-nighter during the exam week. Caffeine is a natural neurotoxic pesticide, and in the wild, if an insect dares to eat the seeds or the coffee plant, the caffeine enters its nervous system and causes immediate paralysis and disorientation, and in many cases, kills the insect. It's a biological weapon designed to protect the seeds from being consumed, and insects have learned to stay away. And let's talk about the history of how we humans ended up addicted to a botanical poison. The legend begins in the 9th century with a goat herder named Kaldi. In the highlands of Ethiopia, Kaldi noticed his flock became hyperactive and refused to sleep after eating the bright red berries of a specific shrub. Kaldi became curious and brought these berries to a local monastery. The monks freaked out after learning the story with the goats and them dancing and jumping up and down and not being able to sleep, and they just call it devil's bean. They threw them in the fire. But as the beans roasted, the aroma was so seductive. They pulled the beans out, crushed them, and decided to steep them in hot water. They called it divine vigilance. It allowed them to pray for hours into the night. They believed they had found the shortcut to the spirit world. What they actually found was they found a way to decouple human productivity from the sun and the moon. They found a way to hack the human hardware, but they weren't aware of the biological cost. Most of us know someone who can drink 4 espressos at midnight and sleep just like a baby. At the end of this video, you'll know the exact genetic reason why they're different from you. By the 1600s, coffee reached Europe, and it fundamentally changed the trajectory of human history. Before coffee, the primary beverage of almost everyone was weak beer because water was unsafe. So humans lived in a perpetual state of mild sedation. Then coffee arrived, and suddenly the London coffee houses appeared. For 1 penny, you could buy a cup of coffee and engage in the most brilliant conversation of the age. We traded alcohol, which is a depressant, for stimulants. The Enlightenment was fueled by caffeine. The London Stock Exchange was born in a coffee house. Factory workers started working faster, and night shift work was born, so factories didn't have to take a break. But guess what? When we traded beer for beans, we also traded circadian identity for clock time. We used caffeine to force our biology to match the speed of the machine. And for 400 years, we've been borrowing from the night to pay for the day. And as any accountant will tell you, eventually the bank comes to collect. Those of you doing night shift work, you know what I mean. Let's go inside and look at the ugly of the mechanism. To understand alertness, you must understand the binding affinity of a molecule called adenosine. Think of adenosine as the metabolic exhaust of your brain. As it binds to your A1 and A2A receptors, it triggers sleep pressure, which is the primary safety valve preventing neural oxidative stress. Caffeine is a master imposter pretending to be adenosine. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and competitively inhibits these receptors, jamming the lock so you can no longer feel your own fatigue. While the caffeine is parked in the receptor, the adenosine doesn't stop being produced. It continues to pile up in the background like water behind a massive dam. You feel great because you're blind to your own fatigue. But caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours. As your liver, specifically the CYP1A2 enzyme in your liver, begins to break down the caffeine, those receptors start to free up, and then the dam breaks. That afternoon crash is not just the coffee wearing off. It's the sudden, violent flood of 8 hours worth of adenosine exhaust hitting your brain all at once. This is when you think having another cup will give you more energy. But this is not your fault, because this is generally the lie that we've been told. Let's talk about your dirty brain at this point. When you block your brain's wash cycle called lymphatic system, let's say for all your adult life, you're not just tired. Under the microscope, I see neurons pickling in metabolic sludge. It is a structural failure of your waste management. Beta amyloid and tau proteins, the same neurotoxic sludge we find in Alzheimer's tissue, build up because you've disabled the cleaning system. We've audited the brain. Now let's audit the industry. Thanks to the industry, you now have the option to switch to decaf coffee. Millions switch to decaf thinking that they're saving their health, but they are trading a stimulant for a toxic industrial solvent. The industry standard for making decaf is the direct solvent method, which bathes the green beans in methylene chloride, and that's before roasting. This is a volatile organic compound used as the primary active ingredient in industrial paint strippers. While the FDA allows trace amounts, as a pathologist, I ask why accept the solvent tax on your liver when the Swiss water process exists, and this is the more green standard in the world of decaf. It doesn't use chemicals. It uses the laws of physics, specifically osmosis and carbon filtration. They use green coffee extract to migrate the caffeine out of the bean without touching the flavor, oils, or the antioxidants. If your decaf doesn't have the Swiss water seal, you may be drinking a processed chemical byproduct, although in trace amounts. And here's the bad news for the slow metabolizers. Decaf is not 0% caffeine. It's about 97% caffeine free. In a standard cup of decaf, you are still getting 5 to 15 milligrams of caffeine, which means for the sensitive genotype, that's enough to keep your brain's overnight cleaning system offline throughout the night. Now, let's audit your metabolism. Caffeine triggers a sympathetic false alarm in your adrenal glands, initiating a cascade of adrenaline. Your liver responds with glycogenolysis, which is a process that makes sugar available to help you run from a perceived predator. But you're not running from a predator. You're just sitting at your desk. Your liver is dumping sugar for a fight that never happens. This creates a chronic cycle of insulin spikes and subsequent crashes, which makes a perfect recipe for insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, 1 cup at a time. Beyond the sugar, we must look at mineral audit. Coffee is a chelator. It contains compounds called tannins and oxalates. These molecules are like magnets for minerals. If you drink your coffee with your meal, you're effectively neutralizing the divalent cations such as calcium, zinc, and iron in your food. They bind to the coffee and pass through your system unabsorbed. Caffeine is also a mild diuretic that specifically targets the kidney's ability to reabsorb magnesium. We live in a society where 70% of us are already magnesium deficient. Magnesium is the master mineral and is responsible for 300 enzymatic reactions, including heart rhythm and muscle relaxation. For females, especially, the long-term debt of coffee-induced calcium excretion is a major contributor to the bone density loss that typically happens in the 6th or 7th decades of life. Let's look at the recent findings about vitamin D. As you know, it's a master hormone in your body with many roles. We're currently living through a global vitamin D deficiency epidemic. We take the drops, the pills, and we sit in the sun, yet for many of my patients, the blood work doesn't move drastically. Why do you think that is? Because there is a hidden leak in your system. Peer-reviewed molecular biology shows that caffeine downregulates vitamin D receptor expression. If you think of your cells like a house, vitamin D is the key to your immune and bone health. Caffeine essentially wears down the lock, and this means that you can have optimal vitamin D levels in your blood. But if your vitamin D receptors are downregulated, your cells are effectively deaf to the signal. Later in this video, I'm going to show you a simple trick to audit your genetics without an expensive blood test. And then we're going to build the preservation protocol. I'm going to show you the 90-minute rule and the lipid buffer that will allow you to enjoy the ritual without paying the biological interest. As a pathologist, I can tell you why the headlines are so confusing. They're looking at the average. But your body, there is no such thing as average. There is only your specific hardware. I'm not trying to take your coffee away. I'm here to help you move from biological codependency to biological autonomy. Going through years of medical school, residency, and fellowship, I experienced this biological codependency firsthand. I also didn't know I was a slow metabolizer, so my relationship with coffee was a love-hate one. If you want to keep the benefits of the coffee bean but stop paying the tax of the drug, you need a strategy. In this video, I'll give you this protocol that I use to end my codependency. It's based on peer-reviewed credible science, and I have listed the sources for your independent review. In your liver, there is a master enzyme produced by a single gene called CYP1A2. Its only job is to break down the caffeine molecule and clear it from your blood. But humans are split into two distinct camps. Roughly half the population are fast metabolizers, which means that they have a version of this gene that produces a highly efficient enzyme. Basically, that means you can drink an espresso at 4 p.m. and by 10 p.m. the caffeine is 90% cleared. For you, the antioxidant often outweighs the stimulant tax. But for the other 50%, you are slow metabolizers like myself. This means that your version of this gene is sluggish and caffeine lingers in your bloodstream for 12, even 18 hours. While you think you're just sensitive and probably happy that this drug works well in your system, the pathology is much deeper. For slow metabolizers, coffee is a cardiovascular stressor. Peer-reviewed data shows that people with this genetic variant drinking just 2 cups of coffee a day increases the risk of non-fatal heart attack by 36%. If you are under the age of 45, that risk jumps to over 300%. This brings us to the ultimate question. Does coffee make you age faster or slower? The data gives us a fascinating paradox. Genomic studies show that coffee drinkers, those who consume the whole bean extract, often have longer telomeres. In pathology, telomeres are caps on your DNA, and they are the gold standard marker of your biological age. But, and this one is the ugly of the audit, isolated caffeine intake is associated with shorter telomeres. How can this be true? It's because coffee is a complex soup of over 1,000 compounds. It contains chlorogenic acid and melanoidins that are powerful triggers of autophagy, the process where your cells eat their own trash. In this video, I want to offer you a strategy so you get all the benefits of the bean, but not the dead, which is the potent caffeine. So at this point, you might still be wondering, how do I know if I'm a slow metabolizer? Or how do I know if my vitamin D is being stolen? The test can be ordered by your doctor, but it can probably cost you about $500 to $1,000 for this genetic test. But I'll save you money and we'll tell you a secret. 1. The 2 p.m. marker. If you drink a cup of coffee at 2 p.m. and you still find yourself staring at the ceiling at 11:30 p.m., you are a slow metabolizer. Your liver has failed to clear the drug. 2. The anxiety second one. If you feel a wave of irritability or unexplained anxiety around 6 p.m. long after your last cup, that is the caffeine's half-life decaying and an indication that your hardware is likely struggling. 3. The coffee breath reflex. If your breath smells like coffee 3 hours after drinking it, your enzymes are sluggish and you're effectively fermenting the drug in your system. If you recognize these signs, you're currently living in a state of chronic cardiovascular and adrenal friction, but luckily with no physical manifestations yet. As we move into the solutions, I'm going to mention specific amino acids and minerals like DL-phenylalanine and magnesium. I'll be referring to DL-phenylalanine as DLPA for the rest of this video. These are powerful tools, but they aren't for everyone. For instance, those with rare conditions like PKU or certain skin cancers should avoid DLPA. If you are pregnant, nursing, or on complex medications like MAO inhibitors, your biology is in a very delicate state. Please talk to your doctor before adding these tools to your routine. Your safety is the only result that matters. I'm also not advising or endorsing any particular commercial brands, and your due diligence regarding purity and effectiveness is prudent. Now, here's a preservation tool to reclaim your hardware. Pillar 1, the 90-minute rule. When you wake up, your brain is mid-wash, clearing yesterday's adenosine. Simultaneously, your awakening response is peaking your cortisol. The protocol is not to touch caffeine for the first 90 to 120 minutes of your day. This should allow the adenosine backup to drain naturally. This single habit eliminates the 2 p.m. crash for 80% of you. Pillar 2, the lipid buffer. Drinking naked coffee on an empty stomach signals metabolic emergency. Unfortunately, this is commonly accepted in many fad diets. It triggers a sympathetic spike that forces your liver to dump sugar into your blood. This also happens often with people doing intermittent fasting, including the 1 meal a day, OMAD, or some forms of ketogenic diets where they drink black coffee first thing in the morning to suppress the hunger. This is a significant stressor and gives you a major spike of glucose and then a crash. My protocol is to never drink coffee black. Add a teaspoon of MCT oil, grass-fed ghee, or heavy cream. And this way, you create a lipid buffer that turns the caffeine spike into a steady wave, protecting your insulin receptors and keeping your liver calm. Pillar 3, the Swiss water pivot. We must protect the brain's internal washing system. In terms of the protocol, 12 p.m. is the hard biological curfew for caffeine intake. If you are a slow metabolizer, that noon cup is still in your brain at midnight. Even if you think you can drink coffee before bed and think you're immune because you can fall asleep, your lymphatic system is still being throttled. After 12 p.m., if you want the ritual, you switch exclusively to Swiss water processed decaf. As a result, you get the telomere lengthening antioxidants without the chemicals used to decaffeinate the bean or the 12-hour neurodisruption. Pillar 4. To bridge the dopamine void left by caffeine withdrawal, you can use DL-phenylalanine or DLPA. If you choose this route, 500 to 1,000 milligrams of DLPA on an empty stomach can help. Only if you tolerate it and your doctor clears you beforehand. The result is that DLPA is the molecular precursor to dopamine. It fills the void caffeine leaves behind, stabilizing your neurochemistry, and ending withdrawal headaches in 48 hours. This is how you reclaim autonomy without the agony. If you choose to skip this, it's perfectly fine. When I stopped, I wasn't aware of Pillar 4, and I was successful regardless. Pillar 5, the mineral repayment. Coffee is a known mineral thief, but you must settle this mineral debt. The protocol is for every cup of coffee you consume, drink 12 ounces of water with a pinch of Celtic sea salt, and take 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate before bed. This way, you keep replacing the electrolytes and the master mineral that caffeine forces your kidneys to flush. It also helps with stabilizing your blood pressure and kills the coffee jitters. Today, we talked about the history of a drug that built the modern world and the biology that the modern world has ignored. As a pathologist, my life's work is the study of why and how we break. And what I've learned is that we don't break all at once. This happens in minute increments. We break because we value productivity over preservation, because this is being rewarded externally. But today, I hope this audit was helpful, and now you know the biological cost. You have a fascinating biology, and the more I learn about it, the more impressed I get. You have a brain that can wash itself, a liver that can heal itself, and a heart that can sustain itself if you stop borrowing against it. I'm not encouraging you to dislike coffee or quit. Moderate or occasional consumption is something that many people enjoy. I'm just reminding you to love your hardware more than your relationship with the coffee bean. If you know someone who lives on caffeine and is spending their biological future for a temporary lift, send this video to them. You might just be the person who helps them stop the gaslighting on the molecular level and wake them up from the illusion of having more energy. I'm Dr. Amin Hedayat. This has been the Coffee Audit. I want to thank you for your time, your curiosity, and your commitment to your own preservation. Stay curious, informed, and above all, stay uninflamed. I'll see you in the next video.